All right, lock in right now. Stop whatever you are doing, put the phone down flat, and give me your complete and undivided attention, because what I am about to break down for you today is going to completely reshape the way you look at Caitlin Clark, the Indiana Fever, and the entire landscape of women's professional basketball in 2026. Welcome back to Simply Explained, the undisputed gold standard for high-octane sports analysis and the deepest basketball drama anywhere on the internet. A genuine, full-scale, Category 5 media earthquake just ripped straight through the center of the basketball universe, and I need every single person watching this video to understand the magnitude of what just happened. Colin Cowherd, one of the most powerful and polarizing voices in the entire sports media landscape, walked into his studio, sat down in front of a national television audience, and proceeded to absolutely incinerate every lazy, recycled narrative that the establishment media has been recycling about Caitlin Clark since the moment she stepped foot into the WNBA. He did not whisper it. He did not suggest it diplomatically. He declared it with the kind of stone-cold confidence that only comes from someone who has studied the historical record and arrived at an unavoidable conclusion. And if that was not enough to set the entire sports world completely sideways, NBC's premier broadcast voice Kate Scott stepped behind her microphone during Sunday night's live national broadcast and systematically dismantled every single piece of the toxic turnover narrative that the corporate haters and old guard critics have been weaponizing against Caitlin Clark's legacy. The establishment is crumbling, family. The walls are caving in on the people who spent 3 seasons trying to minimize a generational talent. And right in the middle of all this chaos, there is one name that keeps appearing at the center of a very uncomfortable conversation. That name is Stephanie White. Now, I want to be absolutely clear before we go any further. This video is not a personal attack. This is a performance-based, result-driven, historically informed analysis of a coaching situation that is becoming impossible to ignore. Because right now, in my raw, unfiltered, personal opinion, the Indiana Fever organization is sitting on the most valuable asset in the history of women's sports, and they are slowly, methodically, and almost accidentally squandering her prime years one rotation decision at a time. We are going to go deep on all of it today. We are going to unpack Cowherd's historic declaration, break down the Sunday night game in granular detail, examine what Kate Scott put on the record for the entire country to hear, and then we are going to have the real, uncomfortable, necessary conversation about what the Fever must do to build a system worthy of a generational talent. Buckle up, because we are just getting started. Let's start with the man who lit the match. Colin Cowherd has been in this business long enough to understand that words carry weight, and when you sit down on national television and make a bold historical comparison, you better be ready to back it up with substance. On this particular occasion, Cowherd came loaded, fully prepared, and absolutely locked in. He walked the audience through a careful, methodical breakdown of Caitlin Clark's professional trajectory, and then he dropped the single most powerful sentence that anyone in mainstream sports media has said about her since she turned professional. He said, and I want you to let this land properly, that Caitlin Clark is not Steph Curry. She is Michael Jeffrey Jordan. Now I understand that your first instinct might be to pump the brakes slightly. The Steph Curry comparison has been floating around since her Iowa days, and on a purely stylistic level, it makes a certain kind of surface-level sense. The deep range is comparable. The logo threes are a spiritual cousin to what Curry has been doing in Golden State for over a decade. The handle is fluid, the footwork on pull-up jumpers carries similar DNA, and the crowd reaction she generates when she rises from distance is arguably the most electric moment in the sport today. But Cowherd's argument was not about playing style. It was about cultural significance, franchise-defining gravity, and the kind of historic impact that reshapes an entire sports relationship with the mainstream public. And when you evaluate her through that particular lens, the Jordan comparison is not just defensible. It is arguably the only comparison that truly fits. Cowherd then proceeded to do something that very few mainstream media personalities have been willing to do, and that is draw the historical parallel with honesty and precision. He walked through the early arc of Michael Jordan's professional career, stage by stage, and the mirror image he constructed was nothing short of stunning. Jordan arrives in Chicago as a rookie and immediately becomes an unprecedented cultural sensation. The city is electrified. The league takes notice. Ticket sales explode. But then in year 2, disaster strikes. Jordan suffers a significant injury that derails his season, limits his impact, and prevents him from carrying his team deep into the postseason. The critics circle, the questions multiply. The skeptics start wondering out loud whether his game can translate to sustained team success at the highest level. But then year 3 arrives. And Michael Jordan comes back with a fury so intense, so overwhelming, and so historically spectacular that everyone who ever doubted him is forced to sit down and reconsider their entire framework for evaluating basketball greatness. He's putting up numbers in the stratosphere. He is dominating games in ways that the sport had simply never seen before. And yet, even with all of that individual brilliance blazing at full power, Jordan still cannot climb the championship mountain alone. He needs his running mate. He needs the player who transforms a spectacular individual performer into a true championship organism. He needs Scottie Pippen. Now look at the parallel universe that Cowherd laid out for Caitlin Clark in 2026. She arrives as a rookie sensation unlike anything the WNBA has ever seen. The box office numbers are historic. The television ratings shatter records. The jersey sales go through the ceiling and keep climbing. But in year 2, physical adversity derails her rhythm and disrupts the entire Indiana operation. And now, in year 3, she is back with full force, putting up elite statistical numbers, leading the league in multiple categories, and marching toward what looks like a historic regular season MVP trophy. The bookmakers are scrambling to recalibrate their odds boards. The narrative managers in the mainstream press are running out of ammunition. She is doing everything a generational player is supposed to do, except the critics keep moving the goalposts. Cowherd addressed that directly, and with a sharpness that was genuinely refreshing coming from someone operating at that level of the media landscape. He said the critics who keep demanding a playoff series victory, while ignoring the structural conditions surrounding her roster, are operating in the same bad faith logic that plagued early conversations about Jordan. They wanted him to produce a championship before he had the organizational infrastructure to support a championship. You cannot blame the brightest star in the solar system for not generating enough warmth when the people responsible for building the telescope keep pointing it in the wrong direction. And then Cowherd landed the analogy that is going to live rent-free in my brain for the foreseeable future. He compared Clark's rookie campaign to Taylor Swift's self-titled debut album. It was a spectacular introduction. It was a statement of intent. It told the whole world that something genuinely special had arrived and demanded to be acknowledged. But then Swift released Fearless, and suddenly the debut felt like a warm-up. Cowherd's point was elegant and precise. The basketball world is waiting for Caitlin Clark's Fearless era, and the only thing standing between her and that moment is having the right organizational infrastructure surrounding her talent. And that brings us to the central conflict that is driving the Indiana Fever fan base completely to the edge of their collective patience. Because Cowherd did not just praise Caitlin Clark during his national broadcast. He also issued a very specific, very targeted, very calculated critique of the coaching situation in Indianapolis. And what he said aligns precisely with what I have been saying on this channel with increasing urgency as this season has progressed. Caitlin Clark needs her Phil Jackson. Right now, she does not have one. I want to be fair to Stephanie White because fairness is what separates genuine analysis from pure noise. She is a professional basketball coach with legitimate credentials and a respectable understanding of the game at an organizational level. But the evidence that has been accumulating over the course of this season points to a fundamental philosophical mismatch between her coaching identity and the requirements of building a system worthy of Caitlin Clark's generational capabilities. And Sunday night's game against the Seattle Storm provided what might be the single most illuminating example of that mismatch yet. Multiple independent courtside observers and content creators who were present or watching at close range documented a specific moment in the first quarter with 32 seconds remaining on the clock. At that point, the Indiana Fever were operating with tremendous efficiency, commanding a healthy 32-17 lead, and the offense was flowing with the kind of natural rhythm that makes Caitlin Clark's game look effortless. She was in the middle of communicating a live tactical adjustment to her teammates, reading the defense, processing the geometry of the situation in real time, doing exactly what a floor general at her level is supposed to do. And in that precise moment, Stephanie White made the decision to pull her from the game. Now, substitutions happen. They are a routine part of basketball management. But what was captured in the body language that followed told a story that no box score can fully communicate. As Clark walked toward the bench, visibly frustrated, White was gesturing aggressively and delivering instructions in her ear. And based on what multiple observers described in their frame-by-frame breakdown of the exchange, this was not an isolated incident. It was the latest chapter in a pattern that has been developing quietly all season long. Every single time Caitlin reads the defense and wants to make a specific decision, the coaching instruction from the sideline steers her in a different direction. Every time she rises from distance and drains a spectacular momentum-shifting three-pointer, the celebration on the sideline is muted, arms crossed, expression blank. But when she makes a routine interior pass to a secondary option who converts a standard layup, the sideline erupts with approval. I want everyone watching this video to think carefully about what that behavioral pattern communicates to the most important player on your roster. It communicates that the system does not fully trust her instincts. And when the system does not trust the instincts of a player operating at Caitlin Clark's level, the entire organization pays the price. The Phil Jackson comparison is worth spending a moment on because it gets to the heart of what great coaching for a transcendent talent actually looks like. Jackson did not try to contain Michael Jordan within a rigid system that had been designed for a different kind of player. He built the triangle offense with the specific architectural intention of giving Jordan the freedom to operate at maximum velocity, while integrating that brilliance into a structure that elevated everyone around him. He understood that his single most important coaching job was to create the conditions in which his best player could access his highest possible ceiling. That is the definition of coaching genius at the championship level. Lisa Bluder did exactly that at the University of Iowa, and the results were the most statistically dominant individual season in the history of college basketball. Bluder did not try to fit Caitlin into a pre-existing mold. She designed an entire offensive laboratory around Caitlin's strengths, her court vision, her range, her ability to manipulate defensive rotations with her eyes before her hands even touched the basketball. The result was a player who looked like something that the game of basketball had never encountered before, because within that specific system built by a coach who understood her completely, she genuinely was. The Indiana Fever front office needs to have a serious, honest, organizational-level conversation about whether the current coaching structure is positioned to deliver on the historic promise that Caitlin Clark represents. If the answer to that question requires changes, then those changes need to be made with urgency and conviction. The window of a generational talent's prime is not infinite. It does not wait for administrative comfort zones to be overcome. If Lisa Bluder can be persuaded to step back into a coaching role, that phone call should already have been made. If a legendary basketball mind like Cheryl Miller is available to provide elevated strategic guidance, those conversations deserve to be happening right now. Because the cost of getting this wrong is not just a missed playoff run. It is a wasted chapter of one of the most compelling careers in the history of professional sports. Now let's talk about what actually happened on the floor Sunday night, because despite all the surrounding drama and institutional turbulence, Caitlin Clark went out onto that hardwood and delivered a performance that should be featured in highlight compilations for decades to come. Going into the game against the Seattle Storm, the Fever were already navigating a significant structural setback. Elite center Aaliyah Boston was ruled out with a lower leg injury, removing one of the team's most reliable interior anchors and fundamentally altering the defensive and offensive balance that Indiana relies on during a normal game plan. The burden that was placed on Caitlin Clark's shoulders as a result was immense and immediate. This was not a situation where she could manage the game carefully from a distance and distribute the load evenly. The organization needed its franchise player to step forward and carry the weight, and that is precisely what she did. Caitlin Clark finished the evening with 21 points, 7 rebounds, and 10 assists, securing her 21st career double-double and directly contributing to 38 of Indiana's total points in an 89-78 victory. She was the engine, the architect, the compass, and the closing argument all wrapped into a single performance. She dictated the pace of play from the opening tip. She controlled defensive rotations with her vision before the ball even moved. She found her teammates in positions that made their jobs look simple, which is the ultimate compliment you can pay to a point guard because it means she was doing the hard cognitive work before the easy physical work even started. And yet, in the pregame promotional materials and league-produced graphics, the featured name was rookie guard Raven Johnson. Now I want to be absolutely precise here because context matters. Raven Johnson was selected 10th overall out of South Carolina and brings genuine defensive toughness and competitive grit to the rotation. She played 17 minutes off the bench and contributes to the team's culture in ways that do not always appear in a stat line. There is real value there, and I am not dismissing it. But her offensive contribution on Sunday night was 0 points, across the entire statistical board. And the institutional decision to position her as a featured storyline on a night when Caitlin Clark was about to deliver one of her most complete individual performances of the season is exactly the kind of tone-deaf organizational messaging that drives the fan base to frustration and provides legitimate ammunition to the media critics who have been questioning the league's marketing instincts for years. You have a generational talent putting up 21 and 10 to carry a short-handed roster to a decisive victory on national television, and the pre-game spotlight is directed elsewhere. That is not a minor oversight. That is a structural failure of institutional awareness, and it deserves to be called out directly. But here is where the story takes a genuinely encouraging turn, because the national broadcast team on Sunday night was not interested in playing along with the establishment narrative. Kate Scott, one of the premier voices in the NBC sports broadcasting stable, used her national platform to do something that traditional WNBA media coverage has been frustratingly reluctant to do consistently. She educated the audience with real numbers, real context, and real analytical courage. Scott addressed the turnover conversation directly during the live broadcast, acknowledging openly that the toxic corner of sports social media is always searching for a statistical flaw to amplify beyond its actual significance. And then she did something elegant and disarming. She pulled out the NBA's gold standard playmakers and put their numbers on the table for direct comparison. Nikola Jokic, a multi-time MVP widely considered one of the greatest offensive orchestrators in the history of the men's game, averages roughly 10 assists per game alongside approximately 4 turnovers per night. Cade Cunningham, one of the premier young playmaking guards in the NBA, operates at around 9.5 assists with a comparable turnover rate. Scott's message was delivered with clarity and conviction. When you are a high-usage point guard who controls the basketball for a significant portion of every possession, who carries the creative responsibility for generating scoring opportunities out of contested situations, and who is operating as the primary decision-maker in a system built around your ability to manufacture advantages from nothing, turnovers are an inherent and acceptable cost of doing business at that level. The players who never turn the ball over are not the ones creating enough. They are the ones doing too little. Her broadcast partner, LaChina Robinson, laughed and offered a gentle warning about the hazards of engaging with internet comment sections during a live broadcast. But the point was already planted firmly in the conversation, and it was not going back. The message reached millions of viewers simultaneously, and it provided the kind of mainstream analytical credibility that the conversation around Caitlin Clark has needed and deserved for a very long time. This is what responsible sports media looks like. It is not reflexive cheerleading. It is not manufactured controversy. It is taking the available data, applying honest context, and delivering a conclusion that serves the intelligence of the audience rather than the engagement metrics of an outrage cycle. Let me bring this all together, because I think the events of this past week, taken as a whole, tell a story that is much larger than any single game result or any single media commentary segment. What we are watching unfold in real time is the gradual, undeniable, momentum-driven emergence of a consensus that the most passionate and informed corner of the basketball community has held for 3 years. Caitlin Clark is not just a good player. She is not just a great player. She is a historically significant athlete whose presence in the professional game has already changed the sport's relationship with the mainstream public in ways that will be studied and analyzed for generations. The viewing numbers support it. The ticket revenue supports it. The merchandise data supports it. The social media engagement supports it. Every quantifiable metric that the sports entertainment industry uses to measure relevance and cultural impact points in the same direction with the same insistence. And now the mainstream media establishment, represented on this particular occasion by voices as prominent as Colin Cowherd and Kate Scott, is catching up to a reality that this channel has been documenting and broadcasting with full conviction since day one. But documentation without action is just an interesting archive. The organizations that have direct stewardship over her career, the Indiana Fever front office, the coaching staff, and the league apparatus at large, have a responsibility that extends beyond the transactional. They are not just managing a basketball player. They are managing a cultural moment. They are holding in their institutional hands something that the sport of basketball produces maybe once in a generation. And the decisions they make in the next 12 to 18 months will determine whether that moment reaches its full historic potential or gets slowly suffocated by administrative timidity and organizational misalignment. The Ferrari does not park itself. Somebody has to open the road. That is where we land today, Street Hoops family, and I want to make sure the conclusion is as clear as the evidence that supports it. Caitlin Clark, now operating in her third spectacular season in the WNBA, is performing at a level that belongs in the historical record books alongside the greatest individual seasons the professional game has ever produced. Colin Cowherd on national television confirmed what this channel has been saying since the beginning. She is not Steph Curry in terms of cultural gravity and franchise-shifting significance. She is Michael Jordan, and that declaration is not hyperbole. It is the result of a careful, historically grounded examination of her professional arc and the extraordinary impact she has had on the sport she plays. Kate Scott used a national broadcast platform to shut down the cheap turnover narratives with real data and intellectual honesty, delivering the kind of contextually rich sports analysis that elevates the entire conversation around women's professional basketball. These are not small moments. These are establishment-level acknowledgments of a reality that the people watching this channel recognized a long time ago. But the responsibility does not end with recognition. The Indiana Fever organization must look at the historical blueprints laid down by the greatest franchise builders in the sport's history and ask themselves a hard, honest question. Are they building something worthy of the talent they have been given the privilege of coaching? Are they creating the conditions in which a generational player can access her maximum ceiling? Or are they, through a combination of philosophical rigidity and coaching mismatches, gradually narrowing the road that should be running wide open ahead of her? In my unfiltered, unscripted, completely raw personal opinion, the answer to that final question is not yet what it needs to be, and the clock is ticking. If you are riding with Caitlin Clark on this journey, if you believe in the historical magnitude of what we are watching unfold, then show your support by smashing that like button right now. Get down into the comment section and tell me whether you think Colin Cowherd's Jordan comparison is the most accurate take in sports media right now. Let me know if you believe the Fever can genuinely compete for a championship under the current coaching structure, or whether it is time for a complete philosophical reset on the sideline. Tell me if you want to see Lisa Bluder come out of retirement and build the system that this talent deserves. Drop your thoughts, fire up the algorithm, hit that subscribe button, and ring that notification bell so you never miss another deep dive into the basketball reality that is dominating the culture. This is Simply Explained, no filters, no corporate scripts, just raw hoops truth delivered straight to your screen. I appreciate every single one of you for rocking with the channel, and I will see you in the next one. Take it easy, drop your answers below. 1. Is Colin Cowherd 100% right that Caitlin Clark is the female Michael Jordan?